Hello and welcome back to the PITA JOE Podcast. Welcome back, you beautiful people. Today I want to talk about the greatest holiday in the world, and it's only a little over 2 weeks away. So Halloween is by far my favorite holiday. I'm a huge horror movie fan, so of course I try to pack in as much creepy cinema as I can. But I also have a really unpopular, weird opinion, which people are probably like, what is he talking about? My favorite Halloween movie is E.T. It's not that E.T. is scary, for any of you who have watched it. It's just the feel of E.T., like the kids actually tricking or treating, the feel of how life was back then in the 80s. I mean this goes for the 90s too. But it's just, no, I didn't ever meet an extraterrestrial, but I really relate to the story of E.T., the feel of E.T., just the atmosphere. It's mainly because the life we had as children, like, I'm speaking for the people that were growing up in the 80s and 90s, but everything felt so much better than what it feels like now. Everything just felt simple. The government didn't take like 30% of our money. Houses were a third of the price they are now. Rent was affordable to anyone with a brain and a little bit of a work ethic. Our chip bags didn't consist of 80% air and 20% salty goodness. We actually rode bikes. We hung out in the woods. We actually used our limbs as kids and got off our lazy asses. We enjoyed like that beautiful, pungent aroma of nature. Like if I closed my eyes, I could picture the smell of fall back then in Pennsylvania when I was a kid. It just brings back so many good memories. Eating hot fries, eating Wild Bill's beef jerky, drinking Dr. Pepper. That was my go-to meal. Well, snack, not meal. But that was my snack as a kid. Get a bag of hot fries. I'd go to the local store on the corner. I'd get a bag of hot fries, some Wild Bill's beef jerky, and a Dr. Pepper, and I'd be set. Take off on my bike to the woods, hang out, look for animals. I remember me and my oldest sister used to look for snakes all the time. But it was her because she would flip over rocks. I was always terrified of snakes, but I would still go with her. And she would just like hunt for them, hold them. Like she actually liked snakes, and I was just completely terrified. But I still went with her because it was fun. We were brother and sister, and we got out of the house. We weren't sitting in front of the TV all day, you know? Yeah, we'd have fun with walkie-talkies in the 90s. Like, there wasn't cell phones yet. We sure as fuck weren't relying on our TikTok. We weren't addicted to that. We weren't addicted to Instagram. We weren't addicted to any of these platforms because they didn't exist yet. I think that really made a big difference too. We had cool presidents. We had that mega pimp Bill Clinton, that gray-haired baby face of a man who could toot a saxophone and tout a side piece. Like, people, for the most part, they cared about thy fellow neighbor. We could also trust thy fellow neighbor. Doors were left unlocked. People cared more about the little things. It was a different feel. And for these younger kids, if you're listening, it sucks that you missed out on it because it was just a good, cool feeling in the world. Sorry for the rambling, but I just kept thinking about these things today, so I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. And I've always been a proud 90s kid. So another topic I want to revisit and cover a little bit more on. I covered it on my first episode, covered it on my third episode a little bit. It's mental health. Mental health to me, especially for me in the past year now, has been very key to me. Like, I needed to focus on it. I didn't focus on it until recently. Going through a split will make you realize some things. It'll help you change your focus. I feel mentally strong now, a lot mentally stronger now than I did when I started this podcast a little over a week and a half ago. So yeah, the first thing I want to touch on is finding a support group, because I really feel like if you have a good support group, it doesn't matter if it's one person or an actual group of people you could talk to, who you could be yourself around, who you could vent to, who supports you and doesn't have any other intentions. They just want to listen to you and support you. That's what you need. You need people who understand and care. I really didn't realize this when I moved down here. I wasn't looking for a group of people or friends or any of that. I was just focused on being a parent. I think too many times, us as parents, we lose the feeling of human interaction. We're just used to being around our kids. We're not used to hanging out with adults. But to me, it's our paternal natural instincts. Like, our first thing will always be our kids. Everything else, second or last, which is great. You could do that and still have human interaction, which I never realized until recently. It's great to talk to your kids, but if the only opinions you're getting from your kids who haven't even learned anything much about the world yet, like, can you really vent to them? No, you can't. You need an adult friend. You need somebody you could talk to, and they'll lend an ear. So I think that's very important. Because a lot of my life, most of my life, I was always a loner. Like, I had my family. I had usually a best friend, maybe a handful of friends at the most. And most times I'd leave stuff inside of my own mind. I wouldn't talk about things. I guess I was just afraid of looking like an idiot sometimes, I think a lot of people have that fear of going out and meeting people and just being good enough for people. I don't think all the time I felt that way, but recently I feel like I know I'm a good person. Other people see this, and I've put myself out there more as far as trying to meet and talk to people. So that's another thing. So basically, finding a support group. It could be the smallest group of one, or it could be a big group, or it could be a 5 or 6, 3 or 4 people. Just find that group. This is another thing that I was thinking a lot about, at least in the past couple of days, maybe the past week. It's the fact that doubt is easier than praise. I'm talking about self-doubt more than anything. It's so much easier to doubt yourself than to praise yourself or even praise your efforts. We all need to change this. We all need to try to not have self-doubt. I know it's another thing that's easier said than done, but you could do it. Fucking man, anybody could do it. You just have to have that positivity. You have to tell yourself that you could do anything. Even though we can't do anything, you have to tell yourself you can do anything. And there's a lot of things you could do. Don't be afraid to change up your life in some way. Don't be afraid to learn something new. I've talked about this before, but to me, that's huge. Just pick something new up. Try it, fail, succeed. It doesn't matter. It matters that you're trying, and you're not just settling and getting caught into one thing. So I hope this advice is helping you. It's helping me talk about it, and I love to use this podcast as a way to communicate to you listeners. I want you guys to know how I'm doing. I want to know how you guys are doing. Like, you guys can write to me anytime on my Facebook. You could write to me on my main page on Podbean, on Twitter at PITA JOE Podcast, Facebook, PITA JOE Podcast, all caps. You can find me on there. You can talk to me. If you're going through some shit, message me. I'll talk to you. Hell, I'm good at advice. I can listen. And if you need somebody to be there for you, just hit me up. Just want to get that out there. Like, we shouldn't have to suffer in silence. Nobody should. So lastly, this is the thing I think about a lot, or I have in the past, I should say, but I actually want to talk about it. This is going to be very blunt, but yeah. All I have to say is fuck sex. Don't take that the wrong way. I love sex, but fuck sex. Music, by far, is the greatest stress reliever ever. Like, it's not even a competition for me. If I didn't have music, I can't imagine life without music. It's just I'm not talking about the new music. There's some good music, but I'm talking like the old like classics, the old the feeling you get when you pop in like a fucking kick-ass 90s tune, like or going back to the 70s and listening to Zeppelin or Floyd or the Beatles, the Stones. So many good bands that just don't exist anymore, or don't make music anymore, but like I will take a Pink Floyd album over Sex any day, for the most part. I just wanted to get that out there. You can fight me on this. You could say, dude, Sex is the best. Okay, all right, I'll give you that. But to me, it's just music. Music is king. It's king to distress. All right, so that's all I have to say for my personal topic. I can't even talk right now. That's all I have to say for these personal topics. But before I end this episode, I really, really, really want to do a shout out to a fellow podcast channel. So what I've been thinking about doing is doing a shout out at the end of every episode to a fellow podcaster or a podcast channel. So I'm going to try to do this weekly because I feel it's great to promote all these other amazing podcasts that are just starting up or have been around for a little while. Nothing beats word of mouth, and we could help each other out. There's plenty of space. There's plenty of audio space to help each other out and share podcasting together. So recently I joined a bunch of podcast Facebook groups to help with this journey I am on, just to help me through all this and get some tips, get some advice, be able to promote other people, to get my stuff out there to be promoted. So one of these podcast channel groups, I don't remember the exact name because I joined so many, but this podcast channel that I want to call out or shout out is called the Film Bros Podcast. So the Film Bros ! Podcast. You can find them on Spotify. Just search the name, the Film Bros ! Podcast. So I posted my link on the same thread that they posted their link. I gave theirs a listen. I posted my link, like I said, and they commented back saying they listened to it and they loved it. So I thought that was really cool that they listened to it and they wrote back. They were communicating with me. And I said, I'm going to give their podcast a listen. I went on to their Spotify account. I found the first topic that interested me, which is the review for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Which anybody who knows me knows I fucking love Marvel movies. I love Marvel universe. Like, I love all of that. So yeah, of course I chose that episode because of my love for Marvel lore. So the two guys that host this, their names are JP and Josh. They're the co-hosts. But the dynamic you could feel between these guys was like so undeniable. They just bounced off each other very well. They both were well spoken. You could tell they went into so much detail writing the review of this movie. Very detailed, like about the cinematography, the soundtrack, the acting, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they loved, what they would change. Just so in depth. I was really impressed. So if you love cinema, you're going to love this podcast. It's called the Film Bros ! Podcast. Like I said, you can find them on Spotify. Listen, give them a good review. Follow them. They have a lot of episodes on there. It's mostly about cinema, movies, television, actors, acting. They got some episodes about the writer's strike in Hollywood. It's just a really cool podcast channel, so follow them. All right, so that's pretty much it for this episode. We're roughly over 15 minutes right now. But yeah, thank you for tuning in to the PITA JOE Podcast. You can follow me on Podbean, Spotify, iHeart, and all the other apps that are listed on the PITA Joe Podcast Podbean page. And that's a mouthful. That's what she said. I'm also on Twitter at PITA JOE Podcast, all caps. And I'm also on Facebook, PITA JOE Podcast, all caps, again. I hope you have a great night. And remember, stay positive, stay hopeful, stay positively hopeful. All right. Goodbye for now. Until next time. Sayonara.